This would be a post thing.
Okay.
Hello, this is Digger here at the ReRaise in Ottawa, or whichever one. So I'm here with
Jason Richardson.
All right. So a couple questions for you. So you have your cards here for your main combo, correct?
Yep.
So why do you deck as such? Because personally, for me, I haven't seen these that much, at least locally, anyways. So it was really interesting that when I noticed that, I was like, oh, well. For those of you that saw or didn't see on my post, I was playing in day one, so I didn't notice that when I faced against them. I got utterly obliterated, so I didn't see that combo. So, what made you think about and try to put that combo in deck?
Well, this is actually a popular deck in Japan and in the United States. So it's really good against aggro decks. It has a good matchup against Ruin as well.
So like anti-aggro?
It can be anti-aggro. I said I've been going against fire and pieces all day. And a lot of the deck is made by 100 Nats. And the way he plays it is fantastic. And I have to play 100 Nats every week. Like, I have to play in these events. Because I'm from Raleigh, North Carolina.
Yep.
So there's been a lot of aggro here, so like being able to play for them and blank them against them, and so they can't keep activating again is huge. Also, if these two stay in play, pile them in for them, stay in play to get big enough, you're just nuking everything every time.
Yeah.
So it was a good aggro choice. I was expecting a lot of this actually, and I was expecting a lot of Earth Lightning because of the Tryouts Cup, the RBA boys did, and they did pretty well. So I played the same deck I played in there. So I thought it was just a really good choice. I've been sticking with the deck. I played it in the last ReRaise. I played it in the RBA events. I played it here. So I've been jamming it with Mike Powell, and I said Mike Powell teaches me and coaches me, and he said, it's a pretty good choice. You're really safe about it. You know about it. So
It definitely has worked out well for you so far. So a couple other questions as well. What do you think about the events here of its atmosphere and how it's run, etc.?
So it's a good atmosphere. Everybody's very nice. I said the event's been run pretty smoothly. Everything's been on time too. We did the 7 rounds, which I thought was going to take a long time, but it
was decent time.
After at the end of it, I could tell it was 7 rounds. Like it just kind of went smooth.
Boom, 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 right?
The app that was used is really smooth. I thought there was some complications at the front of it. Just never used it before, but it's really good.
Okay.
The prizing's been amazing. Giving out 2 Almatroxes to everybody was nice. And the free prizing and the raffles. It's been
I think I saw some of the other custom prizing as well. You get like little, as like a little like, hey, thanks for coming to Canada, like little crystal tokens, right?
Yep. Richard Carpenter was giving out little acrylic cards that had crystals in them. I think I got one. Okay. One of these.
Yeah.
So that's super nice. And then the actual the playmats are really cool. Amethyst Road got a playmat. She's really happy about it.
Yeah.
And she's doing fantastic right now. She's playing in a match.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Now, kind of like a bit of a question. So now I'm assuming you want to try to go all the way to the top. Do you know if anyone would be that you're hoping that's already taken part in the OSS side event? Is there anyone that you think that you want to win, or you think that would win?
Mike Powell, all day, every day. I think Mike Powell, he had a rough on in the main event. He ran into a lot of his mirrors and stuff, and a lot of wonky stuff. He was expecting a lot of RPV, which is his deck wins. You just can't beat it. And a lot of aggro, but he just didn't run into that, which was very odd. His matchups were kind of weird. But in the side of it, I think he's just going to take the whole fight.
All right.
Yeah, because he's a ReRaise finalist. He's top 8'd Nebraska as well. I mean, he's a national player. So he's one of the best here.
All right.
Like, all accreditations to him.
Yeah, that would be great actually. So that'll have to be concluded for the interview so far. Thanks for taking part and whatnot, and hopefully you get all the way to the top, right?
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Have a good one.
Hey guys, this is Shane Beckman and
Anthony Spignesi from the Canada group Toronto. We're going to be doing some commentary for the 2022 ReRaise Canada. So all the footage you're going to see is from day 2 Top Cut, and we'll hopefully take you through some really good games, and you can see how the tournament panned out.
So this was my top 8 match versus Tony. I think this was quarterfinals. Yeah, because I think I faced Tony, and then I faced Wayne, and then I faced Justin. So I'm running my Terra deck, and Tony is running, my most hated and feared deck in the tournament, Fire Ice, and not an enjoyable deck for me to face at all. I think my opening hand was pretty good from what I remember and what I'm seeing here. I played 2 backups turn 1, which is pretty good for a control deck, I guess. And going first also versus an aggro deck is always a free turn, right? So I can't complain about that.
Yeah, so the very scary thing about this deck is that it's essentially designed to play the game for as little amount of time as possible. And the reality of the situation is right now there just aren't a lot of decks in the format that have the tools to survive long enough against this deck. So if we have any aggro enthusiasts out there, this may be the deck for you, much to the dismay of your local play group. We're kidding. It's a very good deck. It's very hard to deal with, and hopefully you'll be able to see why very soon.
Funny story. Before this game, I literally went up to Tony. I was like, "Oh, I'm thinking I might just drop out of the tournament and go join, the side event." Because I was like that depressed that I was facing him, because I faced him day 1 too, right at the end of the day, and he completely murked me in 3 minutes, and I was just not looking forward to this experience again. And you can see where this kind of matchup goes already. The backup freezing. He's trying to disrupt my strategy as much as possible, and this deck is just very consistent at doing that, right? That your backups are going to get frozen, and that you're going to take some quick damage. You're going to discard, and you're about to see what I guess unfolds. I'm about to see. I can't even remember entirely.
Yeah. So the very interesting thing about this deck, for those who may not know, I believe in this form that it was played at ReRaise, there are no backups in the deck.
No, there's Larkesius, 1 CP Larkesius,
1 CP
which
Larkesius,
I think is relevant. Maybe not in this match, or the second game, because we won 3 games in this. That's what I do remember.
Okay. So this deck used to run
Just 2.
4 CP Lock and 2 CP Mutsugi,
Yeah.
and I guess the idea of that was to just play Lock, call backup, search for the only other backup in your deck, and then you have 1 backup of both of your elements, and it essentially just helps you curve out. But what Tony was saying to me at the tournament was that Larkesius is just better. You always have to overpay for it. It's a 1 CP fire backup, but you always have to pay the 2 CP for it, because you just don't have a backup to tap and generate that 1 CP. But it's essentially just a one-time removal spell, and from what Tony was telling me is that he found a lot of success with this card because it just removes the one threat that you maybe can't get around with Dull Freeze or whatever other limited removal options there are in this deck.
Yeah.
And it was just very useful for getting rid of an extremely annoying target for this deck, so that all the other cards in your deck can just do what they're supposed to do, which is remove other blockers and push your damage as quickly as possible.
Now, I kind of want to catch up on the play-by-play here. Celis was played after the Kadaj, another big card in this deck because it just enables so many team attack tactics with Noctis as well. And you can imagine her ability to freeze 2 backups every time a Cat 6 forward team attacks is pretty oppressive. So you can see, again, like my Fiona gets frozen again here. The Zezak came into play, and he sent Valifor, I think, to the break zone. Obviously, having Una Valifor against an aggro deck is pretty good, so losing the Valifor was not my desire. And you can see I just drew and passed immediately. I was counting on EX bursts at this point, and I do believe we're about to see some of those. Shantoto went to the break zone. There's the Chuchulain. Okay. I negate the Kadaj just in case he plays the Laws, I believe, and just to stop any future dull/freeze triggers. Draw 2 for my turn. We're still on 1 backup. I saw the Cosmos. I don't think I was entirely happy about that. But yeah, and that's one of the drawbacks of playing a light backup or light cards in general is sometimes you're just going to draw them. I did get the Shantoto though, I think. Oh wait, no, I didn't. What do I do here?
So part of the problem with being in this situation, especially as a control player, is you can discard a card, play the Cosmos, and pass. But now you're actually giving that Celis full value when it declares a party attack. So it's like, yes, you've ramped a backup, but you're never going to activate that backup. So
exactly. So I play the Cosmos here, and I pass turn, and I know it's going to get frozen. Oh, I remember what happens now. But let's wait for to see what happens. So I'm almost at lethal at this point. I have enough cards in hand where I'm not really afraid of like a lightning trigger, but this deck has a lot of haste, so he could drop a Squall or a lightning and gain haste by not having so many cards in hand. So I play the Chuchulain on the Celis before in attack prep, so he cannot freeze my backups, which is very significant in this deck.
Yeah, because now essentially what this sets you up for is, unless he has a Revenant to freeze one of these backups, you have a very, very on curve Shantoto.
I hit two EX bursts there, and I had a Valor. So I drew 2 cards, and I activated all my backups anyways. So there was no backup freezing going on this turn. I bet 6 damage though, so that's not a great thing. I have a lot of cards in hand at this point, and I discard 1 for the Argath, but I do believe I have the Shantoto. Yeah, I can see the Shantoto in my hand there.
Which is exactly what I was saying. So negating the Celis with the Cuchulain is so relevant here because now you have 3 active backups on your turn, and you essentially, especially with these EX bursts that you hit, your odds of drawing the Shantoto are so
very high, very high.
And you just curve into it perfectly now with the 3 backups, and that essentially gets you to a point where you've stabilized, because now on your next turn, if you're 4 backups and you drop a Terra with summons, like, he has to refill board with forwards because that's all his deck has. So now if you can just like play an on-curve Terra, dull freeze, whatever forwards he plays after the Shantoto wipe, it's just, you're in a very favorable position. And it's an uphill battle from there for the aggro deck.
So I actually decided to play the Atomos first here instead of the Shantoto immediately, because I wanted to get that on board ASAP. And I mean, it doesn't really matter what order, but you get at least 2 free backups if you play it first. So we're about to see a pitch 3, I think, here. Yeah,
there's the Shantoto. This is also a really safe line as well, getting the Atomos down, because if he does happen to play those hasters and push for the lethal,
I have 2 Rainbow CP now as well, and I can also have a blocker, right? So see, like, there's the haste, right? The lightning. He kind of rushes here, so he goes immediately to attack. I do think I have a response before he attacks, and I remove the haste.
Remove the haste.
And also, any kind of shenanigans that might happen from her second ability. Although I have so many cards in hand, I don't think it mattered. At this point, you can see this is not going to be very good for Tony, I think. So I dropped the Terra. I just dull freeze the lightning, attack with the Atomos, activate 4 backups, and there we go. I think. I play another forward here because I'm going to start putting pressure.
Yeah, from this position, barring like a really bad misplay on the part of like the control player, you're in a pretty stable position as long as you leave something up to block and you're being really careful about the potential squalls. You're going to be in a good position for the rest of this game now. Speak of the devil, here comes Squall. Let's see how we react to this one.
I have a response, obviously. I remove the break zone.
Yeah, so cast the Mist Dragon, remove the Break Zone, just dull the Squall before it can even get
And
off.
the reason I did that is I also knew this deck played Salteus, so it's just win-win for me, right? Like, draw 2 cards. I think we begin to see more forwards come into play this turn.
Yeah, at this point, as the control
The game
player,
might almost be over at this point, honestly. Like, I use a Fiona trigger here. I pitch 2 cards from hand.
Yeah. As long as you have some kind of summon that you can cast during Tony's attack phase every turn, at this point, you're essentially just winning the game, because that Squall is just never going to get a chance to attack, provided you have any castable summon in hand.
And I just take the Lulu.
Yeah.
Right? So that will get back something. And that wasn't a cast, actually.
Right, so we're going to see the Lulu come down now. And again, I imagine you just grab something that is going to be castable on Tony's turn. You could even just cast it now on your turn, just freeze the Squall. It's an Ice Fire deck.
Okay, I take the Valifor, okay.
Yeah. As long as this Squall stays frozen.
I also have a Leviathan in hand here. So I pitch Luso, I play the Valifor, I freeze the Lightning. And what else do I do here, I wonder?
I'm expecting another freeze to come out on this Squall.
Okay,
here.
attack with the Terra. I think I attack with the Animals, then on the stack I use the Fiona trigger. Yeah.
Fiona trigger. Yeah.
And I think Tony is wondering if we can only do it once per turn here. And I was like, unfortunately. Unfortunately not.
Unfortunately, they did not have the hindsight with this card to limit it.
Oh yeah, I take Kral here just so I could get more summon active abilities here.
Okay, interesting. So, do you remember why you chose the Lightning for the freeze?
I don't think I think I knew I was going to do everything anyways, right? Like I knew that like Kral was going to come down, cast another summon. I had a Leviathan in hand anyways, so then what summon is being targeted here?
Yeah. You know, there is something to be said for giving your opponent that, like, false sense of security in a tournament as well, right? It's like, you know the deck and you know what cards you're going to cast for the rest of the turn, but your opponent doesn't necessarily know that in the moment. So, you know, just give them that little seed of hope, thinking that you targeted the wrong thing with the freeze, and then just...
okay, so I Kusid the lock here. And then I play the lock, and Cody scoops. I think at this point, he's done with this. He doesn't want to play anymore.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you have enough forwards on board to present lethal.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I think at that point, when you're an aggro deck, you're just like, okay. When he has a 9K and 8K, he's gonna reactivate his backups, and
Tony's played enough games with this deck to know that
what his outs are, and
exactly. If this deck isn't killing you on turn 3, turn 4, it's probably going to lose that game. So especially in a format where you're on a timer and you have to potentially play 3 games, he knows he's got no outs to the board that was presented, and it's just more optimal for him to scoop and save time for, you know, a potential game 3 if it goes to that point.
For some, like, maybe newer players, the reason I'm counting my cards is it's always a good idea to know how many cards are in your deck, even between games. Just, you know, sometimes things get, like, put off to the side when you remove them from the game and whatnot, and in an official event, you want to mitigate any kind of, like, mistakes that can happen as best as possible. You know, we had there's stories in our community about missing cards, 49 card decks, and it happens, right? Mistakes happen, and you want to do your best you can to mitigate it, though, of course.
Yeah, there's enough things to worry about when you're playing in a tournament. one thing that you don't ever want to have to worry about is running around the venue trying to find
exactly.
this one or
especially if it's like a $200 card. Like, imagine if one of my Terras was missing, right?
Yeah, no, you'd be putting out.
I'd be like
flyers, like reward for
Oh
for returning to her father, however many foils you want.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, that's just a very, especially at this tournament, there was a lot of 2CP Zidane being played.
Oh yeah, I was even running one in this deck too.
Yeah. So anytime you're going to be stealing cards from your opponent's deck and putting them onto your field, it's definitely a good habit to get into, is just counting your deck and making sure that you only have the 50 cards thereafter. I did play one match at this event where my opponent and I had the exact same colored sleeves, and I had stolen maybe like 8 to 10 cards of my Zidane. So at the end, we were both very much like looked each other in the face, and we're like, oh yeah, let's just make sure we have all the correct cards in our decks, especially because we're not playing the same elements. So it would be pretty bad if all of a sudden there were like 10 ice cards in my water wind.
Funny story. I have a story, and it goes back to my Yu-Gi-Oh days where I lent cards to my friend Patrick, and he lost pretty early. He went like X4 or something like that, and so he dropped out, and he returned the cards to me, and stupidly I put them into my deck box, and naturally I got deck checked, and I actually got a game loss out of it. So it's just like, it's those little things, like you want to check, is only my deck here? Is this just my 50 cards? It's just a courtesy to yourself and to your opponent.
Yeah. So to start off this game 2, it's looking like we're getting a turn 1 Celis into free Mustadio. So Celis triggers the discard, which is, a bit of an expensive effect for just the one discard. But when you have the Mustadio in hand, who gets to be played for free, if your opponent's discarded a card this turn, it at least, makes up for some of that value. So you get 2 decently sized bodies on the field, and he also threatens the Celis party attack double freeze, as you all saw last game.
I overpay, actually, for the Terra here, and I go immediately for the dull freeze, but I think this is where you see how quickly this game spirals out of control. He takes back the Larkesius and then plays the Larkesius.
Yeah.
And now I think this game already was pretty much over at this point. I do think I draw the Shantoto. Maybe not. Not yet. I don't have enough cards in hand. I think I just passed turn here. Again, I'm like praying for like 5 EX bursts. Yeah. And but again, like this is just, it just shows you how scary this deck can be, to be honest.
Yeah, like I would say Celis
goes to damage.
Yeah. I would say Celis turn 1 is maybe not the optimal line for Tony's deck. But you can see how even with like a suboptimal start, you can still present a very threatening board extremely early.
So I didn't see the experts that I'd hoped. I'd only got one. So I do think I just got the Shantoto. Yeah, you can see it there.
Yeah, so we're probably going to see the classic drop the Shantoto and pray.
I think I am considering whether I play the Atomos here, and I do. Because then I can just end up on 2 active backups. That way you can't like freeze them with some shenanigans, right?
Yes.
So we go from there. I'm pretty like dead by this point, I think. Yeah, he gets the lightning. I have 0 cards in hand, which is a very not pleasant place to be. Oh, that was very lucky though.
Wow.
Another Chuchulain. So I negate the lightning at least, so I don't take an end of turn damage. I don't know how many cards Tony actually has in hand here. The camera was kind of like positioned more towards me for many of these matches. So
we're going to see the Emperor come down. I don't believe it filled his condition for the discard. I don't see the Emperors in the break zone.
He does play the 3 CP Dissidia kind of Emperor, I think, with the not so great art, but
Yeah, I just mean it requires the Emperors in your break zone to trigger the discard. But at worst, it's still a 2 CP forward that helps Tony present lethal on board. So I think that's exactly why he just opted for the no value Emperor there.
You can see I drew another Shantotto here.
Which doesn't exactly help in this situation.
It's definitely not going to help me in this situation.
Looks like a Luso.
Yeah.
Which is not great either.
I block with the Atomos here. He gets the Emperor trigger. So he's going to discard me, maybe? Again, I'm not sure how many Emperors he has.
It looks like there's just the one Emperor in break zone. But for Tony, there's no reason not to attack into the Atomos there. It thins his deck, and it gets one of the Emperors in the break zone. So
I did discard. Discard. So he did have...
So I must have been the second Emperor that he needed in order to trigger the ability. So, yeah. Definitely the correct play on Tony's part. He's trying to end this game as soon as possible while he still has any kind of advantage. Now let's see what happens.
I think I'd try to play a Tyro here. And then maybe go for an Atomos attack. Just to get some forward presence. I'm wondering now, like, was I just like showing my hand to people all day? Woo!
I think from this angle, it definitely
looks that way.
Any opponent would be
so.
Able to just see your hand, but I think when you're actually on the table,
at this point of the day, like, I was so tired, I was probably just like leaning on the table for support. So
I mean,
like,
it worked out. So
I guess so.
So let's see, what do we go for here? Looks like there's a Norse Talon, a Leviathan, and
there was a Tyro and a Lulu.
I think.
And
a Lulu in hand. So we're gonna get the Tyro.
And there's so many times in this day where I was like, I should have played 3 Hecaton Shears. And I only played 1, actually, so...
Yeah, this, for those who haven't seen the deck lists on FF decks, this was a very, very aggro-happy tournament. And as someone who played against a lot of aggro all day, I can tell you there were some very good aggro decks at this tournament, and if you weren't running good board wipes, especially if you're one of the control players, you probably didn't have the smoothest tournament.
Probably not. I know even like some of the more control decks like Mono Wind, and I think Jonathan running his Ice Wind, and the other Jonathan running his Water Wind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those decks, they rely on enough setup to consistently board wipe. And, you know, Icewind being, like, probably the most favored in those 3 for the early board wipe. With the Barrel Eye triggers, with Ochus and whatnot. Even then, it still isn't enough to combat some of these hyper-aggressive decks. I did take my sweet time with this term. Yeah. And I do think I go and hopefully do something relatively soon.
We are just left in suspense here. This is, to be fair, this is a very complicated turn, because if you don't...
like, if I don't do the right thing, I'm dead, and, you know, maybe even if I do a good thing, I'm probably dead.
Yeah,
it's just...
Exactly. You know, in these situations, even if you're 90% sure, even if you're 100% sure that you're going to lose the game on the next turn, game 1 didn't take that long.
No.
So you might as well try to figure out this board state here, especially when you know that he's only got 2 forwards and you're potentially 1 turn away from stabilizing. That's realistically all you need against a deck like this, is 1 optimal turn that...
I think one of the issues, and I wonder if I go for lock here, because I think in my mind I would have liked to go to lock here. Oh, there he is. And like in my new version, I've already upped the amount of locks as well. He's just too good of a card, to be honest.
Yeah, especially against an aggro deck like this. If
this is a 9K body, right? Like,
yeah, you put this big body on
effects.
the field. You essentially remove 2 forwards with dull freezes, and then if you can, it's an aggro deck, so he's going to be low on cards at all times. If you can hit whatever card is remaining in their hand, it's going to be really, really hard for them to do anything.
I think in hindsight, I should have gone for the lock here. I don't know why I didn't. I think I was maybe thinking I would steal something. And that's actually not a bad steal there. I don't know why I didn't play it. Oh, it was because of the lightning trigger, I think. I had to keep a card in hand. Maybe that's why I didn't go for the lock. Because I think I didn't have enough cards in hand where I could have played him and also
kept the card
yeah.
For the lightning, yeah. So that's a fairly safe thing as well. So the thing about Tony's deck as well, because almost every card in the deck dull freezes something, if you play Zidane against this deck and you hit one of those dull freeze effects, it almost just wins you the game immediately, because you're going to get 2 forwards out of it, and one of them is going to be, you know, a dull freeze.
Like if you get his last wall, it would have been pretty good. So this is game 3. At this point, I was just like, Lord help me. I mean, I already knew my strategy at this point. You have to get at least probably 2 backups plus Terra, and get her online, and probably Shantoto being one of those 2 backups, and pray that you can stall out to begin controlling the board. Again, it could have gone anyway here. I do think he was definitely like favored in our matchup. From what I understand, the first game, the difference between me winning and losing, again, because I was at 6 damage, was him getting a forward. He had the wrong CP, I think, is what he told me. And well, I guess we'll see how this one plays out too.
Yeah. So this is where winning game 1 is so crucially important, because especially in a matchup like this, as the control player, you essentially have to go first.
Yeah, exactly.
To win. So, you know, winning dice rolls, obviously really great. Winning game 1, obviously great. And yeah, and all you can really do is hope for the best. Believe in the heart of the cards, as some would say. And
I do think like Adamos played a really important role, because Tony didn't really consider. I mean, he obviously really can't consider to not put me to 3 damage. I think he has to just go hard.
Yeah.
And Adamos definitely was like a star player in a lot of these aggro matchups, because as that card just produces so much value in control decks, right?
Yeah. Kageyama, if you're watching this by any chance, these 2 CP monsters are really, really good. And they probably shouldn't be online as forwards until like damage 4 minimum. I would push for damage 5.
There's such like a weird, like, why is it always 3 or 5? I feel like, is there any like damage 4 triggers?
There's a few, but I don't think they're very relevant. I think Squall, the original one, has a damage 2, a damage 4, and potentially a damage 5 trigger as well.
No, just damage 2 and 5. That's
2 and 5. Well, there you go.
So 2, and again, I feel like it's so rare. I feel like 3 and 5 are like these magic numbers for some reason.
Yeah, and it's this really weird thing, because damage 3 is probably too early, and damage 5 is too late to be relevant. So yeah, you know, Kageyama, if you're watching this, maybe try slapping a damage 4 on a future card and see how that does for balance. You know, obviously we were in a place for a very long time where monsters just weren't very good, and now we have Atomos,
God, yeah.
Biblos, Tross, like
I mean,
every
it's good.
single
Like
one of
I
those
do think it's like
monsters.
good because like, but the problem is like maybe these powerful monsters should have been like monster centric rather than any deck. You know, like.
Yes.
And well, I mean, that's their design decision. I do like that the game is speeding up for the most part. I do think that's important for competitive play. Like games already take like too long sometimes as it is. But that's also just like I think our player base becoming familiar with the game and whatnot. Right?
Yeah. And all it takes is like one efficient modal summon that can get rid of monsters of 2 or less as one of the modes. You know, the second they print a card that says break a monster of cost 2 or less and draw a card or do something else that's relevant. Maybe this isn't going to be as much of a problem, but as it stands right now, these 2 CV monsters are insanely good, so you should definitely play them if you haven't considered that yet. Okay.
So Tony has frozen my Tyro. My turn 1 backup was a Tyro. It was not the greatest, obviously, especially when you can get Kadajed, and I just kind of held cards in hand. Because again, like, the way I built this deck was I knew I'd go up against decks like Tony's. And I wanted to have the best possible chance. And you can see, like, I want EX Burst because I want to have cards in hand, and I just want to be able to, like, drop cards like Shantoto, like I just did.
Yeah.
And go from there, right?
Yeah, fortunately you do get the turn, what is this, 2 Shantoto there? The EX Burst to recoup some of the value off of the turn 1 Tyro. Having a triple pitch for Tyro never feels great, but when you can immediately
I
get one of those
quadruple
cards
pitched for
back,
Shantoto, so
yeah.
it's not great, but I'm in a good position because I have like 2 Rainbow CP and an Atomos on board.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have a lot right now. Speaking of which, Onion is like, I think, so busted. The fact that you can like discard down to 0 and then draw 2 cards for free, like, come on.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like that was a bit of a design oversight.
Yeah, I think that was definitely one of those cards that went super underrated. Because we've seen this kind of effect before with like Poo Poo and Moogles, a very similar effect.
But it wasn't attached to like an 8K 4-drop forward. Right?
Exactly. And it's also the situation as well, right? It's like that kind of effect benefits a deck like Tony's more because Tony's deck is about just
pitching your
dumping
whole hand
and putting bodies on field.
So I don't think Tony was counting on the Valfor hit, but I didn't have Yuna. But it did kill the Argath because he's a wee boy.
Yes. So yeah, killing anything for free off an aggro deck, like against an aggro deck, you're going to take damage. You need to accept that fact. If you can kill anything for free, even if it's something as, negligible as Argath, a 3K does as much damage as a 9K in this game. So killing anything for free is super, super relevant when if they hit you in the face, they do the exact same amount of damage no matter what their power level is. So
I did tap 3 to play and discard to play the Hecaton. And then I attacked with the Atomos and played the Lulu to follow up. Mm-hmm. Okay, he Zazats me after a Salteas play, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
Hits the Hecaton after I took it back with Lulu because I was like, I'm just going to Hecaton you forever. He obviously did not enjoy that idea, so I actually make a crazy misplay here. I mean, totally honest of me, and also because I'm an idiot and was tired. I think I tried to play another Tyro. I tried to play a second Tyro here, and Tony's like, "Yeah, you already have a Tyro."
The classic Tyro number 2 coming in.
Actually, Tony could have been kind of mean because I did see the bottom cards in my deck there.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it was kind of irrelevant to the game.
Yeah.
Because those cards would never be accessed. And I'll own that. He was good about it. And then, I don't even remember what I do next.
Okay, so we've...
I think I have the Kryl in hand, and I think I'm gonna look at the. So Tony has no summons, so there's nothing to really steal. I do have another Hecaton there, so I could wipe his board because if you play Hecaton with Kryl and Lulu, but it would kill my own stuff as well. I could kill both forwards. Like Zazat would die too.
Right.
Because of Lulu trigger, right? But I don't know.
Yeah, if we could have pulled off that Tyro there, if we could have pulled off what I would have called the great heist,
Yes.
that would have been great because you could have searched for the Terra, Atomos attacked, casted the Terra, and been in a pretty good position. But yeah, you know, it's probably a good thing that you can't have 2 Tyros on the field at any given point. So we'll see what happens here. Zazad is not a nice forward to have to deal with.
Yeah, I don't even. Maybe do I just pass here? I can't even remember.
Yeah, you're at 4 damage.
And
you can block the Celtics. You can also threaten the combat trick.
Yeah, only on my turn.
Only on your turn. Yeah, this does seem to be a bit of a pickle. Unless you just go.
Oh, I think I wing it with the target
the Alexander.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably would have done the same thing here. Just
I do think I get a hit, and you know what I do? I think I do Alexander, Cryle, Alexander.
Yeah, draw 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see if that does actually end up being the line. So casting the Alexander here is really good because now that means that if he does want to block you, he has to trade one of his forwards in, which is not something that Tony's deck wants to do. Tony's deck never wants to lose any forwards for any reason. So like making the Zazat not a big enough blocker for the Atomos is just really, really good here because you essentially put him into this position where he either has to lose a forward, which is not great for his deck, or just let you get the team attack, right? Activation.
Like, and even like next turn, he wouldn't be able to team attack if he drew a Noctis, which would have been big for him.
Yeah, exactly.
So Atomos comes in, the trigger happens, backups activate, Squall goes to damage, and like Anthony said, he didn't want to lose a forward here.
Yeah.
But and I would not have lost the Atomos anyways. I'm telling you right now because I had Leviathan.
Yeah, the Leviathan was there in hand, so it's like. Yeah, Tony's just in this like really terrible situation because he takes a free damage, doesn't get rid of Atomos, which is, you know, one of the best cards in the deck. Maybe one of the best cards in the game at the moment. It's so good. And if this Atomos sticks for any longer, which it's going to because he wasn't able to block it, you're just going to inch closer and closer to stabilizing. And
pro tip, by the way, this we're trying to figure out here, I remember. What the cast count was, and it's at 3 now. Because I played Alexander, I played Cryle, I played Yuna. I reactivated my backups, so we're at 4 casts once I cast this Alexander on the Cryle trigger.
Yeah.
So I will draw 2 cards, which is great.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. So you can see them working it out now, the amount of cast there. Yeah.
It's a good idea to keep a dice, and for the future, I 100% will.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. Oh, I think I top deck like pretty nutty here, and this might just close out the game here.
Yeah.
Oh no, I passed turn.
Pass turn, okay.
I mean, I'm in a pretty healthy position, I think, right now.
Yeah. Tony like really needs to get a Noctis on board to threaten anything at this point, because otherwise, sitting at 4 damage with no lightning on board. No Squall on board yet. There's really nothing to fear.
I think I'm just checking the Zezat for the 1,000 power bump when he attacks. Just wanted to make sure. I do have a Remora in hand, and I do have Yuna in the field. I have 1 backup up, so I was considering Remoraing, and then I could block.
What is the active backup there? It's the Tyro? Okay, yeah. So you're in a position where you can threaten, like, 1 CP Leviathan to just block something, draw a card. Yeah, you're just in a very, very good position here. And if he hits an EX, which it looks like he does, he hits Valifor.
And that's brutal because now Celteus has 3k damage on him. My backups are all active.
Yeah.
And I now have 2 blockers which can finish the Celteus, and I can trade up with the Leviathan. So.
Yeah.
And Leviathan also now makes everything untargetable, I think, right? Because at 5?
Yeah, at 5. So it's like not only would Tony lose his forward.
I think he passes here.
Yeah.
He understands it's not a great position to be in.
Yeah. He's had enough time at this point, 2 games in, to see that like Leviathan is a card that exists in this deck. and it's just not worth it for him to risk attacking into that. Okay.
So I'm using the Crow trigger here. I'm targeting Kusith. Casting the Kusith.
Yep. So what are we going to take back? The Terra? Yep. That also would reduce the Celteus, so that can no longer trade with the Atomos.
I don't know if I actually triggered the ability there, but...
Doesn't look like it.
I don't know if it really mattered in this case. So I attacked again.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to trade the Celteus, probably still for the same reasons. He knows I have Leviathan probably, and that he'll just lose it. Yeah.
Yeah. And as you can see here, probably maybe the 3 best cards in Tony's deck just got hit to damage back to back.
And now Terra comes down. That was the second cast, by the way. So to activate off the Atomos, Terra's just freezing everything. I'm in like a godly position right now.
Yeah.
I've got lethal on board for next turn, and he has nothing.
Yeah. And once the Terra's on board as well, it's really, really difficult for Tony to ever threaten any kind of lethal because he just plays the Squall, attempts to go to combat, you just cast any summon that you have in your hand, dull the Squall. That card is just never, ever going to be able to do what it does, which is close out games.
And so he plays the Emperor here. I do discard my duplicate Lulu.
He gets a cheap Shantoto.
Shantoto, yeah.
Does he though? Looks like a 4-cost.
I think he pitched 2.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is obviously not great for him. You definitely want to get that reduced cost on the Shantoto. It's just a really, really rough position because, Shane's board is lethal. Literally all he needs to do...
And I have Terra, so...
Exactly. Literally all he needs to do at this point
summons.
is cast 2 summons and it's game over.
Because I don't think there's any EX burst in Tony's deck, so...
I believe that's correct, yeah. So there's literally no comeback factor from Tony. This game has already gone on longer than what Tony's deck is designed to do. This game probably should have been over like 10 minutes ago because Tony was pretty much the first player done every match all throughout the round of Swiss, which is what this deck is really good at. So if you have any best of 1 tournaments in your local play area, consider giving this Fire Ice deck a try. It is
I was like kind of confused and like I was like, does he have a trick up his sleeve? And obviously there was no trick. It was a valiant last stand, and the game was kind of just over at this point. I just cast 2 summons here and Tony scoops. Yep. And that was it.
And that's it. And there you go, everyone at home. That is a master class on how to survive an aggro onslaught. Obviously your deck needs to be built for it. Your deck playing, 20 plus EX bursts definitely helps.
And all the board wipes. And Terra herself is also just she makes aggro decks kind of cry when she's in play. So yeah.
So there we go. Hope you guys enjoyed watching that.
Up with another pretty hyper aggressive deck, 0 backups, mono fire this time. Little history, I guess, here. Justin and I had practiced this match pretty extensively prior, not only on Octagon but also at the hotel. We came in the same car, so there was only winners from this match. To be honest, whoever won would have been a good thing. And it really depends on me drawing Shantoto, I think, basically to win this match, and or like locking again out with Terra. Yep. It's the same old story. Yep. Hackathon doesn't really work as well versus his deck because they're all big beefy boys, but same goals.
Yeah, exactly. So whereas Tony's deck was hyper aggressive, focusing on cheap forwards that dull freeze and discard, Justin's deck is very much about ignore anything that the opponent might be playing. Just play the biggest dudes on the field, but with the same goal in mind, ending the game as quickly as possible. I think if you averaged out the amount of time that it took Tony and Justin to finish their games, those are probably like the top two in terms of being finished their matches the quickest on both day 1 and day 2.
I do think that the interesting difference between Tony and his Justin's deck is that Tony's deck focuses more on like opponent attrition. He like starves you of resources, whereas Justin's deck looks for cards that get recurring value, like Tenzin, Luso. So they kind of function as his backups, right?
Yes, exactly.
And so I play Yuna at my turn 1, which is pretty solid as a turn 1 backup.
Yeah, and against Justin's deck, you don't have to worry about the dull freezing of your backups. So in a way, that makes the matchup a little bit easier. Justin's deck just presents more threats of like OTK, because you can set up these really
Hien
insane boards of like Hien with
Xenos
and Ridditon, Gaius, and you could essentially, your opponent could be at 0 damage at the start of the turn and be dead at the end of it. So that's like the big difference, whereas, Tony's deck needs to kill you over the span of 2 or 3 turns. Justin's deck can do that as well, but it also has the added benefit of just like, I drew all Final Fantasy 14 cards, so I can just put you from 1 damage to 7 in 1 turn, or 0 damage to 7 sometimes. There were multiple games, especially throughout day 1, where like turn 2, Justin would put them from 0 to 6. Yeah. And it was essentially at that point they draw a board wipe or they lose the game. Yeah. Because, also the problem with trying to fight Justin's deck is that you can't really do combat with it because all of his forwards are going to be bigger than yours. With the board that you see that Justin has right now, the 5 CP Xenos, well, one of the 5 CP Xenoses, it plays a character of cost 4 or less when he comes in. So he plays the Hien off of it, and then Xenos has the added benefit of every time he attacks, he gives your whole board except for himself plus 2,000 power for the turn. So if your strategy was to match his forwards and hope to trade, Xenos just says no to that strategy. So it actually forces you to play kill spells or board wipes on his forwards, because you're never ever going to be able to actually trade with them.
So I'm not sure here. Yeah, I'm already at 3 damage, and I do have Atomos in hand, I believe. So this was pretty good for me. I think this turn I actually do some shenanigans, because I got quite a few cards in hand. I did hit the Chuchulainn EX. Didn't actually prevent much of the bleeding, unfortunately, from last turn. But, maybe it was a good thing, I think, in some ways. So yeah, I do play the Atomos here for my first card. I think, and looking back, I think this was the wrong play to make. But it also set up for like a lethal board state later on in the game. So maybe, hindsight is 2020, right? Yeah. I think I play the Rydia.
The Rydia. I was going to say, is this double pitch Terra here? But I can't recall if there was any ice CP in hand. I mean, I think, or summons for that matter. So it doesn't look like a Terra would be feasible. But overpaying for Rydia is definitely an option. Let's see what you go for. It looks like you have the Valifor in hand. You have a multiple Yuna. What do we go for here?
So, I mean, I probably cut that out.
I mean, this is just kind of the reality of like a top cut match, but also the finals. It's going to take you a long time to figure out some turns, especially again when your opponent presents a board that is as big and as difficult to deal with as the board that Justin has. You can't really afford to speed through a turn without completely thinking through every single option that you may have. Sometimes the lines are very clear, and sometimes your opponent has lethal on board on turn 2. And that's just the reality of the situation. So let's see. Yeah, so we do go for the double pitch Rydia here, Atomos trigger. So for anyone who doesn't know what this Rydia does, you search for 2 summons, reveal them to your opponent. Your opponent chooses one to put in the break zone, and the other one gets added to your hand. So we're going to reveal Kusith and Asura. So now Justin is deciding which summon to throw to the break zone and which summon to put in Shane's hand. So depending on what's in Shane's break zone here, these 2 cards could essentially accomplish the same thing, because he can, you know, maybe choose the Asura to take back a forward of 2 or less, or a character of 2 or less. But yeah, it's the Kusith, and then we go into the lock.
Yeah.
So I believe that was just a 3rd cast lock. So that's a 4 CP lock.
Yeah, 4 CP lock, yep.
Yeah, but still against the board that Justin presented, that's pretty devastating.
Yeah.
You break the nail since it's a forward of cost 6 or more, and then you dull freeze the other 2 forwards, which again, they need to attack to generate any kind of value for Justin. So if you can...
But he gets his value engine back online anyways. Tenzin, again, I was... At this point, I think I audibly sighed. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
I didn't think I was in a bad position here, because I had an active Atomos, a lock, and a Rydia.
Yeah.
I have a Tyro, I got a Yuna, and I think I drew, so I have a Terra now in hand as well.
Yeah.
And so
Terra with 2 or more summons here is obviously going to be great, because you can just tap down the Tenzin and the Hien, like let the Xenos attack through. Or, you know, you have the option of trading into it with Lock, because Xenos can't pump himself. So, yeah, we're going to see the Terra into the Dull Freezes.
And you got an EX here, which searches for Riatin, I think. The 2 CP.
Yeah.
I don't think he can be... How does he work again? You only...
So Riditin can only be casted if you already control a category 14
which is
forward.
pretty easy in those decks.
Yeah, which is very, very easy in this deck. Most of your forwards are category 14. Yeah. So, you know, if Justin played any summons, like, you know, 4 CP Phoenix or something, he would have the option of just, like, cheating that summoning restriction and getting the Riditin on the field from his break zone. But, you know, this is a 50 forward deck from Justin, so he is always casting that Riditin.
So Atomos activates my backups here after the Terra, and then, you know, I put... This is lethal on board already, by the way. So 4 forwards on board. And so this is where, like, I maybe think the Rydia was a bad play, because, you know, I overpaid for her. She doesn't really do anything for me. like those summons, like, weren't valuable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like... But having that extra damage on board and now having Terra is just like... Well,
I think
I
think in that situation, all you really needed to do was cast any card that was remotely efficient to get the lock down to 4 CP, because, like, you don't want to pay 6 for the lock. I mean, you will if you have to, but yeah, getting that extra body on board, perhaps maybe you had in mind the Rydia's secondary ability to, like, reduce power.
I was considering like maybe doing, like, you know, Rydia with Valifor is also really good. Rydia, Valifor, Lulu especially very good in this deck. I am actually trying a new build with the backup Rydia, but she still, like, provides some good utility for board wipes, especially, and dealing with combat as well. This was a really good top deck for Justin, obviously. The Skull, he's such a devastating card for 4 CP.
Fortunately, you do have the summon in hand to just dull it, so you can't get the value.
So I actually do end up casting that Kusith, taking back the Krall now. So I'm kind of setting up my little noose at this point. And trying to close out the game here. Yeah,
so Justin's just forced to pass here. If he attacks with the Xenos, like, unless he hits some really fortunate EX bursts, it's guaranteed lethal. So he has to leave something up and, you know, force.
So I make it so Rydia takes less damage this turn. And dull with the Terra.
Yeah. So the reason why this is relevant is because, you know, Justin could potentially have Brynhilders. Obviously, we know that he doesn't.
Yeah.
But anytime you're going up against a mono fire deck, it's probably a good idea to play around the potential Brynhildr. So just preemptively casting that Leviathan there so you don't lose the Rydia to any X-Burst is just a pretty safe line at that point. And as you can see, Justin has no answer for that, and we're gonna go to game 2.
Yeah.
And we can edit all of this out in post, all the dead airspace. Yay!
I mean, what do we even put into the dead airspace, though?
You just cut all of this out and just skip right to when you guys draw cards.
Or music or something.
Yeah. That's true.
Like, no one wants to watch.
No one wants to watch us shuffle.
Pile
That's
shuffling
true,
and stuff anyway. So you just cut it all out, and then once you guys draw, and that's it.
I'm surprised Travis didn't cut this out when he so. This was kind of the annoyance of like this whole thing. Is like just it kept bouncing back and forth. Like Travis did the initial editing, and then he sent it to me. And
Pfeiffer?
Yeah. I should have just done everything, to be honest, because like it would have just probably been less of a hassle.
Too many cooks in the kitchen kind of thing. Yeah.
So we see the start of game 2 here. Wait, why are we rolling? You can tell I'm completely out of it at this point.
It's been a long day.
I mean, you saw I pretty much like fell asleep immediately once we started driving in the car.
That's the real footage that the people would have wanted to see. Yeah, so obviously Justin as the aggro deck is gonna probably choose to go first here, and
he does.
Yeah, his line is very simple here.
He wants Luso and he wants Tenzin. That's basically
it.
Which one will we start with this game? I don't know. I can't remember actually. Dun, dun, dun.
The thing about Justin's deck is that it has so many good like turn 1 lines. It's like you can.
Oh, there's the Luso.
There's the Luso.
He knows my deck doesn't have like a 5k ping on turn 1.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas like versus a fire deck, this would be a horrible play to make.
I mean, not to say that it's horrible. It's just that against like the fire matchup, you're rolling the dice. Yeah,
I think if they have the Brynhildr, like that's like a game losing move. I don't know if I'd ever play this turn 1 versus a fire deck.
Yeah, so we get Luso, the flip into the Zemus.
I was pretty scared of this, and you'll see kind of how this game goes down from this. I remember what happened as a result of this.
Yeah. Getting the early Zemus is like really threatening because yes, Zemus does cut into your deck. He does mill yourself out, but when it's this early, you can just willy-nilly deal with whatever forward your opponent puts in front of you and attempt to end the game before you ever get to a point where you're decking out.
So I shouldn't Toto turn 1.
Yeah, so you just...
I'm like, none of that.
Yeah. That's probably the safest bet. You just instantly mitigate whatever value the Luso can generate, and now he's got to draw another value engine, which he does. Here's the Tenzin. And I believe this is the first of many whiffs.
Yes, this game. Oh my goodness. Did he like... Well, we're about to see, I guess. I don't want to spoil it.
Yeah. Yeah, no spoilers, but...
I think I play back up and pass at this point. After the whiff, you feel pretty confident after seeing that kind of stuff happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And I believe we're going to get whiff number 2
here. Oh, yeah. That was so sad.
Yeah. And, at this point, once you've whiffed Tenzin twice in a deck like Justin's...
You're like, womp, womp, womp.
Yeah, you're...
Especially, like, you're relying on those cards in hand to go aggro, right? So...
Yeah. Yeah, and now, like, if this Tenzin gets answered, even if it doesn't, you've just essentially...
I think I just dropped Terra here, yeah.
Yeah.
And I freeze the Tenzin.
Yeah.
It stops the bleeding, gets Terra on board. I already know Justin, has it's a hard way... it's a hard you can't really like remove a forward beyond like actually we're about to see
so we're gonna see Nail here.
Yeah, this is how he removes the forward. And I in hindsight I kind of was surprised at this decision that we're about to see. Was this a whiff again?
I believe there were 3 in a row.
Oh no, there's a he in there. There's a he in there.
Yeah, so there you go. So he finally hits his value. It's just at this point, it was a little bit too little, too late kind of thing. You know, Justin could still pull off an explosive turn here, but those two whiffs just have bought Shane's deck so much time now, and
Yeah.
it's just, you know, we'll see what happens.
I think this is where... Yeah.
Yeah, so
I feel like this play coming up, and we're going to see the Zemis come into play, right? And I don't know if this was the right choice for Justin. Again, like, you know, when you're in these high-stakes situations, you sometimes just got to, you know, put fortune to the wind, right? And I don't think this paid off because he tried to, you know, remove Terra from the game and milled 15 cards, and I Chocobo hurt a hand.
Yeah.
Which is
You
pretty
know-
devastating. It's pretty devastating, to be honest.
You know, situations like this make me think that a card like Zemus maybe could have been worded a little bit more fortunately, sort of akin to like Opus 2
Yeah.
Vasoya, where it's like if you don't actually get to resolve the
Then you don't like take the
removability-
damage, or you don't get to mill the cards.
Exactly. So like
Yeah.
15, like milling 15 cards. Maybe the 7 you keep. Like 7's a relatively low amount of cards. I mean, it's a high amount of cards to mill, but it's not 15, right? But I think for the mill 15 ability, if you don't get to resolve that ability, you shouldn't have to get rid of that many cards from your deck.
It is tough, and you know, for those, for maybe new players who might be watching this video, anything that comes before colon is actually a cost. So you have to, before the effect even activates, you have to do it. And that's kind of where, you know, my friend Anthony was pointing out, like, there could have maybe been an allowance here where maybe it's a zero cost action ability that then says choose one forward, mill 15 cards, and remove from the game. So if the target isn't a legal target anymore, it would fizzle. Maybe something like that would be too good.
It might be too good. Like, you know, as we learned from this tournament, is these hyper aggressive no backup decks do have a very relevant place in the meta, and maybe if you take away these like risky cards that let them end the games early, maybe that makes them too good. It's just, yeah, you know, this, to be fair, you know, everything that has happened that has gone wrong for Justin this game has kind of been the perfect storm. He was rolling throughout the rest of this tournament, and you know, that's part of making top 2 and winning a tournament as well. It's like you do kind of need a lot of things to go your way.
And you know, he's actually not doing that bad. It's just now there's like a timer on him, and we already know that there's no samurais at the bottom of the deck, so he kind of put himself into an even stickier situation with that tens and not really going to be able to recur any value at this point. Because, like, you know, again, for some people who don't realize, 15 cards, that's like 7 turns. 7 turns off your playtime, essentially. Your ability to play the game has been diminished by 7 turns. And, you know, some games, and the entire game is 7 turns. And so you think he's put a giant clock on himself here. And, yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah. And not to mention, it's like, you know, you're removing these cards from the game. These are all cards that you could have potentially drawn and played. So if you happen to remove the cards that you need, it's only going to get harder for you.
So I did get a bit excited here, and I did actually not pay the correct CP for lock. I paid 4 CP, but then you'll see me actually discard, I think, 2 more cards here. Yeah. And then tap the for the ICP on the Shintaro.
Yeah. Sometimes when you have these backups that produce every element, you can, you know, be, if you're not diligent,
A little too overconfident.
Yes, exactly. So, you know, luckily that mistake is corrected here. It was as simple as just pitching a card for the correct CP that was missing, and it didn't end up impacting anything. So, just something to keep an eye on.
And again, like Locke, again, you could see comes in clutch versus these aggro matchups. I did prioritize him for sure. Like when and you know, it's interesting because like prior to this tournament, I don't think I prioritized him as much. But after seeing all these aggro lists, I do realize how important he is for this this kind of matchup.
Yeah. I mean, Locke against Justin's deck specifically as well is just so much higher value than he already is in any other game, because Justin plays so many of these 6 CP forwards that just constantly generate value. You know, Locke essentially just says when he enters the field, remove 3 forwards, because you're breaking one of the 6 drops and then you're dull freezing 2 other forwards. Yeah. So especially when you can get Locke's cost as low as 2, it's just such a massive swing in tempo, and there's not a lot of things that a super aggressive deck like Justin's can do against a play like that.
I was actually a little bit worried at this point because he has 5 forwards on board. And one of them being a Luso.
Yeah.
You can see how thin his deck is now. Like, it looks like it's just like 1 card almost, but I'm sure there's a couple in there. But my strategy at this point was just to stall out. I know I have a Leviathan at hand, and I think this is where you see the value of that card in this deck, because it allows cards like Locke to like just trade favorably with pretty much anything, and get a Terror trigger.
Yeah. So all Justin can really do here is go to attack phase, trigger the Luso, hope for a really good flip, and go from there.
Unfortunately, like, the Luso is also milling his deck.
Yes.
It was a duplicate, so he doesn't get the forward on board.
Yeah. Just very unfortunate. If he got some kind of useful enter ability there, or like a Squall or something, this definitely becomes a little bit hairier for Shane's deck, but the fact that he gets off of that, and now he has to go to combat with the same amount of forwards that he started his combat phase with, it's not the best feeling. Justin's got to be wary of so many potential combat tricks as well, so he goes in with the Hien first.
Almost forgot he was brave.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, freeze forever!
Yeah, there really is no good way to declare that a brave attacker is attacking other than to point to it and shake it. Yeah, you kind of just shake it up and down and say, this is attacking now. Whereas, with any card that doesn't have brave, it's pretty easy to determine.
I will say, if Justin's listening to this, Justin, you have to turn your forwards upside down for freezing. It kind of triggered me, I will say. Like, because I'm such a visual person, right? I love to see that on the fields.
Yeah.
And I understand it's not like an official game thing or anything. I was just like, oh my god, which things are frozen?
Yeah.
And it's like, and it is a good strategy actually for competition, I do think.
If I had to choose between my opponent not doing the extra turn on their freezes or playing their backups where their forwards should be, I think I would choose the freezing every time. Oh my god, that was
I remember at Nationals some people who were doing that, and I was just like, what is going on? I allowed it. I was just like, but in retrospect, I was just like, no thanks.
Yeah, it's just, please don't do it. You have every right to, but it's like, what's the quote from Jurassic Park? It's like, just because you could, you never stop to think if you should.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's kind of how I feel about things like that. But no, Justin did tell us in the hotel
cards
that he does enjoy doing that just to
piss me off.
just to mess with people a little bit. And again, you have every right to.
Yeah. And I think this is Justin basically scoops here because he's got 3 cards left in deck. He knows that I can kind of just stall him out for the rest of eternity at this point.
Yeah, exactly. It just got to a point where it's like the writing was on the wall, and I think for any of you who were watching that game from start to finish, I know we sort of zoned out for a minute there, but essentially once that Zemus failed to kill the Terra, it's just,
I do think that is really where the game ended.
Yeah.
There were I had a lot of outs. There was only a couple scenarios I think where Justin could have been successful. Maybe if he found like another Hien.
Yeah.
And got the haster and then kind of did some tack shenanigans there. But he didn't, and that's kind of where things devolved, right?
Yep. But again, still like a really fantastic deck. Obviously, second place finish for Justin's deck. It's it's very, very hard, and it can overwhelm a board very quickly. You see here, I think there were definitely some people sitting around and watching that final match who were interested in Justin's list, because you could see him laying out some of the key cards there. Definitely really, really strong, interesting deck.
I think other than that, though, Jonathan Ciordia said, the game between him and Justin was the fastest game he had played in both days. So
yeah. I
didn't get to see that one.
I was watching those games, and I was just like, man, unless Jonathan can pull off like multiple Lusos on like 2 backups, it's pretty rough. And I think that's what's so scary about like the current iterations of aggro decks, is that there really isn't enough time for these combo board wipes anymore. Like Mono Wind is a great deck in its own right, and once it gets set up, it can do some pretty ridiculous things, as I'm sure anyone who plays this game competitively can attest to at this point. But man, if you don't get to go to at least 4 backups in a deck like that, you just don't ever get to wipe the board. And obviously, against decks that are going 5-6 forwards wide very early, that doesn't feel so great.
Yeah, and I think as well, this meta there's so much diversity in it, and it was interesting to see, like, it really reminded me kind of how the cards fall in tournaments, because if I had perhaps faced different matchups, things could have happened very differently, right? What if I faced you? Like, Sky Pirates is a pretty good counter to my deck, just due to the nature of the cards in our deck, right?
Yep.
Or similarly, like, what if Justin faced a mid-range, more like a Lightning Earth deck? Such as maybe the Lightning deck.
Yeah, the Lightning, Earth, X-Death control decks, which is funny enough. I faced 2 of those in day 1, and fortunately I had a pretty favorable matchup against those. Just because you can dodge a lot of the board wipes in that deck, just the nature of Sky Pirates, where you get to blink your forwards with kites and stuff like that, and just instantly refill boards after to dodge board wipes. That's kind of just the beauty, and maybe sometimes the detriment.
Curse.
Yeah, the curse of tournament play is, if you get your good matchups, you're gonna be feeling pretty good about yourself. But if you start facing decks that maybe you weren't prepared for.
I actually faced 2 of the people I didn't want to face, Jonathan and Tony, very strong Canadian players.
Yeah, exactly.
And I knew that their decks would both be problematic for mine. I knew Mono Wind would be favorable, but Icewind, there's too many tricks within Icewind, especially the ability to break monsters and freeze backups. And
the moral of the story here is that the meta is great, and I think this tournament, like, if you thought the game was getting stale at all, or you couldn't come up with fun ideas for decks, I think this tournament, the beauty of it is that it really revitalized the meta with a bunch of decks that people have never seen before. And if you were doubting the health of the game, maybe your local meta was just a ton of Mono Wind, and maybe you were getting sick of the current format, I think this is the perfect tournament to show you that no, there are a lot of creative options out there, a lot of viable options, and this might be the most diverse and healthy meta that has ever existed in any card game.
I do agree, honestly. Like, I know some people seem to complain, but if you look at the top 8 lists for this tournament, every single deck is different. There's no duplicates. There's 2 mono fire decks, but they're completely different. Like, one is FF14 fire deck with no backups, and the other is a deck with 18 backups. Like, these are 2 substantially different lists. It really shows a variety and creativity in the deck building. And I think overall it was a great event, and it really showcased again. North America doesn't, especially it seemed, beat to the tune of one drum. You know,
Yeah.
we see a lot of these Mage and Sen tournaments where, you know, there's like top four is all the same deck. It's
Yeah.
all like a mono Firebraska deck, but you know, and we had those decks at this tournament, but they weren't the ones that pulled through, and it was fascinating to see, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, to really drive this point home, 2 sets ago, we were looking at every major tournament having like minimum 5 soiree decks in the top 8 cut.
And now we see no soiree.
And now there is no soirees, and we just saw a top 8 with a lot of good players in it, and every single one of those players was running a deck that couldn't be more different from the other. So, you know, if nothing else, I hope you take away from this tournament that the meta is fantastic, and you know, there is a deck for you out there. So hopefully you enjoyed seeing these decks, hopefully seeing them in action on video, because it's one thing to just see the list on FF decks, and it's another thing to actually see these decks played at a high level. Hopefully, you know, watching this gameplay today has, you know, given you some ideas and given you a better understanding of just how interesting and fun the current format is. So hopefully the next set we'll just keep it going, and it'll be just as diverse and just as healthy, and hopefully we'll be commentating more of these tournaments in the very near future.
And I think, you know, we'll round off here and say thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe to our Kingston, Ontario seasonal series. They're great supporters of our Canadian community, and we owe them a lot for not only recording this and setting this all up, but also for organizing and establishing prizing and everything above and beyond. And thank you so much, and see you later.